In July 1518, a woman stepped into a Strasbourg street and danced alone. By September, over 400 people were dancing themselves to death. Frau Troffea wasn't performing, she wasn't celebrating. On that hot summer day in Strasbourg, she simply couldn't stop moving. Her body convulsed to rhythms no one else could hear. Within a week, 34 others had joined her, men, women, teenagers, all locked in the same involuntary motion. By the end of the month, the number had swollen to over 100. The physicians of Strasbourg had no framework for this. They gathered in hushed consultation, their theories colliding. Some blamed the heat, others whispered of demonic possession. A few suggested something far stranger, that the dancers had been cursed by Saint Vitus, a saint known to punish sinners with uncontrollable movement. The city council made a decision that seems absurd now, but made perfect sense through a 16th century lens. If Saint Vitus was punishing these people for their sins, then perhaps more dancing was the cure. They hired musicians, they cleared the marketplace, they encouraged the afflicted to dance, believing the saint's anger would eventually subside. It didn't subside, it accelerated. The more music played, the more people felt compelled to join. Some danced until their feet bled. Others collapsed mid-step, only to resume hours later. The movements weren't graceful, they were violent, jerking, desperate. Witnesses described them as possessed, thrashing against an invisible force. By mid-August, the marketplace had become a kind of purgatory. Families brought food and water to the dancers, who consumed them between convulsions. Some people danced in groups, their bodies synchronizing in patterns that seemed almost choreographed, except no one was choosing this. The city was splitting at the seams. The death toll rose quietly at first. Matthias Wecker, a dancer, simply collapsed and didn't rise again. His body gave out, then another, then another. By September, people were dying at a rate of several per week. The city council finally disbanded the musicians, too late. What was happening in Strasbourg wasn't new. Historical records showed dancing plagues had struck Europe before, smaller outbreaks, but with the same signature: involuntary movement, community spread, and death. But this one was different in scale. This one was witnessed. This one was documented. Modern medicine has theories. Some point to ergot poisoning, a fungus that grows on rye grain and causes convulsions, hallucinations, and psychological breakdown. Others suggest mass psychogenic illness, when collective trauma and stress become so intense that the mind manifests physical symptoms across entire populations. But the truth is murkier than either explanation. Strasbourg in 1518 was a city under siege, economically, spiritually, physically. There had been plague years, famine, religious conflict. The social fabric was so frayed that when one person broke, others followed. The dancing stopped in September, not because anyone found a cure, but because the afflicted simply died or became too weak to continue. 34 people confirmed dead. Some historians suggest the real number was higher. Records from that era were incomplete. What's haunting is that Frau Troffea, the woman who started it all, is barely remembered by name. Her death went largely unrecorded. She's a footnote in medical history, a vessel for something no one understood. And in a way, that's the real tragedy of the dancing plague. The incident terrified Europe. Preachers used it as proof of divine punishment. Physicians debated it for centuries. But the dancing plague of 1518 reveals something darker, that under enough pressure, communities can become contagious spaces where illness, physical or psychological, spreads like wildfire. It wasn't mass hysteria in the way we think of it today. It was something more complex, a collision of biology, trauma, poverty, and belief. The dancers couldn't choose to stop. Their bodies had become prisons, and the city could only watch. After 1518, dancing plagues continued sporadically across Europe, smaller, more localized, but following the same pattern. Each time, they appeared in cities ravaged by poverty or disease. Each time, they spread through community contagion. Each time, they killed. The last documented case occurred in the 1800s. After that, the phenomenon vanished, not because it was cured, but because the conditions that birthed it Extreme poverty, untreated trauma, collective desperation became less visible in medical records, not less real in human experience. What the dancing plague teaches us is that the mind and body are not separate machines. Stress, trauma, and belief can literally move us. They can reshape neurology. They can be contagious. And in moments of collective breakdown, we're all vulnerable to forces we don't fully understand. Strasbourg recovered, the city rebuilt, but the memory lingered, a reminder that civilization is fragile and that sometimes the most terrifying epidemics aren't visible under a microscope. They move through the streets with their own terrible logic. Subscribe for more forgotten histories that reveal what we've buried in the margins of time.